Our guy, because we've been his constituents for over 30 years. You know, we've never campaigned for another presidential candidate before because there's never been a presidential candidate worth campaigning for before.
That is a pretty bold statement, that you honestly have never found another presidential candidate going back through elections where you felt the person was sort of telling the honest truth about what he or she felt.
Yep, that's absolutely correct. You know, now it's gotten to be kind of usual to talk about the 1% and the 99%, but I mean, these are issues that Bernie's been talking about for over 30 years.
Is Jerry next to you? I'd love to sort of get his thoughts over. Yeah, that'd be great.
Right, here you go.
Hello, it's Jerry.
Let me just ask you, I mean, Ben was saying that he has not found a politician going back through all the years who has actually told the truth, and that Bernie Sanders is the first one. Do you share that, you know, it sounds like a kind of dim view of American politics?
Oh, absolutely. Bernie is unique. He is a politician who comes along once in a generation. Obviously, Hillary Clinton was much better known, but I think what we're seeing is that when more people learn about Bernie, his history in the civil rights struggle, how involved he's been in worker issues, they're getting incredibly excited.
You brought up civil rights and Bernie Sanders' civil rights record. John Lewis, you know, a pretty iconic civil rights activist, came out and criticized Senator Sanders, saying he doesn't remember ever working with him during the 1960s. How do you respond to that?
Well, I have a lot of respect for John Lewis. What I know is that Bernie has a lot of strong support among civil rights activists, ranging from Ben Jealous, who's the former head of the NAACP, Spike Lee, Cornel West. There's a lot of support for Bernie in the African-American community.
Could I get Ben back on the phone?
He's right here.
Let me just ask about an issue that Bernie Sanders brought up a lot in the state of Michigan, and that's free trade. He was very critical of some free trade deals going back over the years. And I just wonder, as a successful business owner, do you recognize that free trade has really helped a lot of American entrepreneurs over the years?
Hey, you know, I don't think that free trade has helped American entrepreneurs. Free trade has helped huge multinational billion-dollar businesses, but it sucks for the American worker.
Could you see some people who know that the brand and the company you founded is owned by Unilever feeling like there's a little bit of hypocrisy here if they're one of the big companies that's benefited from free trade?
I think Unilever is a company that benefits from free trade. Unilever may like it or not, but I'm gonna say what I believe.
Can I get Jerry on the line for one last time?
You had enough of Ben, didn't you?
No. I just want 100% honesty. How does Bernie's yearning taste?
I've known Ben for 50 years, and as far as I'm concerned, Bernie's yearning is the pinnacle of Ben's work, and I do not say that lightly.
Jerry Greenfield and Ben Cohen from Ben & Jerry's Ice Cream. They are big supporters of Bernie Sanders, and we will hear from a congresswoman who backs Hillary Clinton elsewhere in the show this morning.
Now let's go from picturesque Vermont to equally picturesque Miami, where the water is under threat. Officials in Miami say a nuclear plant is threatening the county drinking water and the health of Biscayne Bay. Here's NPR's Greg Allen.
It's a problem that began to develop 2 years ago after Florida Power and Light upgraded generating capacity at its 2 Turkey Point nuclear plants south of Miami. After the upgrade, the plants ran hotter. Issues turned up in a closed network of canals that provide water to cool the plants. Because of evaporation, water in the canals became saltier and saltier. Now tests by the county confirm that a plume of that hypersaline water has contaminated the aquifer. Miami-Dade County officials are concerned about well fields not far from the nuclear plants that provide drinking water for the 2.5 million people who live here. County Mayor Carlos Jimenez says while it has to be addressed, it should be kept in perspective.
This is not Flint, Michigan. Our drinking water is completely safe.
At a county commission meeting this week, officials got an update on what the utility is doing to stop the groundwater contamination. Matt Raffenberg of Florida Power and Light says the utility is working on drilling a series of wells to extract the hypersaline water from the aquifer, work that should be completed by the fall.
Those things take time. We want it to happen very fast as well. Not only do we have to design it, we have to permit it, and that goes through a whole regulatory process.
New test results released this week show contamination from the nuclear plants is threatening not just the county's drinking water, but also the health of Biscayne Bay. The bay, which stretches from Miami to the Florida Keys, is a shallow and fragile ecosystem. The county tests show hypersaline water from the cooling canals, along with phosphorus, ammonia, and a radioactive isotope, tritium, is leaching into the bay. Rachel Silverstein with Miami Waterkeeper, an environmental group, says it's already had an impact.
Biscayne Bay in the last few years has had the first ever algae blooms, and these fertilizers and these chemicals that are in the cooling canal water can make these algae blooms worse. It can make it difficult for fish to live, harmful for people as well.
Florida Power and Light believes it can fix the problem, but it has an even bigger project in the works. The utility hopes to receive licenses next year to build 2 additional nuclear plants at Turkey Point. Greg Allen, NPR News, Miami.
It's Morning Edition on WNYC at 7:41. I'm Richard Hake. Good morning. Stay tuned. Coming up in just about 10 minutes, it's WNYC's health segment. Viagra has been out for nearly 20 years to boost the sex drive for men, but for women 2 decades later, no equivalent exists. That story coming up in just about 10 minutes. It'll be cloudy today, but still mild. Highs will be in the mid-70s. We could break some more records today. Chance of rain, though, 20% in the afternoon. A better chance of rain tonight. Lows will be in the mid-50s, and tomorrow, Friday, it'll be mostly sunny with highs in the mid-60s. This is WNYC.
WNYC is supported by The Humans, a new play by Stephen Karam, directed by Joe Mantello, on Broadway at the Helen Hayes Theater. Tickets available at thehumansonbroadway.com. Rutgers University Continuing Education, your lifelong learning partner, offering online opportunities for professional development and for fully online degrees. More information at lifelonglearning.rutgers.edu.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Dave Mattingly. People are being evacuated from homes in North Louisiana because of heavy rains and flooding. Residents of 3,500 homes in Bossier City have been forced to flee as a precaution because of rising water at a levee. Meteorologist Patrick Burke is with the National Weather Service.
Parts of northwestern Louisiana received 10 to 16 inches of rain, and other spots in Arkansas and eastern Texas have also received upwards of 10 inches of rain. So really a massive amount of rain, and it has caused some severe flooding.
The flooding is blamed for 3 deaths in Louisiana, Texas, and Oklahoma. Nevada rancher Cliven Bundy is due in court today in Nevada. NPR's Kirk Sigler says Bundy is expected to plead not guilty to a range of felony charges stemming from an armed standoff in 2014.
Today's arraignment is related to an armed standoff prosecutors say Cliven Bundy and his militia supporters organized near his Nevada ranch in 2014. He faces 16 felony charges from that self-described range war over cattle grazing on federal public lands. Now, it was widely seen as the precursor to the armed occupation of the Federal Wildlife Refuge in Oregon this year.
And 2 suspects are being sought in Pennsylvania for the shooting deaths of 5 people at a home near Pittsburgh. I'm Dave Mattingly, NPR News in Washington.
I'm Richard Hake on WNYC in New York. A runway at LaGuardia Airport is now opened again after emergency crews had to repair a damaged section of it. The disruption caused flight delays last night. Officials say a departing aircraft reported seeing pavement damage on the runway earlier in the afternoon. New York City is getting more than 15 miles of physically protected bike lanes this calendar year, the most of any previous year. The city's promising around 50 miles of non-protected bike lanes too, but Transportation Commissioner Polly Trottenberg says it's more about quality than quantity.
Yes, you want to get to miles, but you also want to make sure that those miles are in quality places where you're making important connections.
The expansion is bad news, though, for Ken Thorpe, chief executive of the New York Trucking and Delivery Association. He says trucks try to park legally and safely, and that it's insane for the city to reduce the amount of space where they can do that. CBS New York is reporting that the U.S. Department of Agriculture is tackling a turkey problem on Staten Island. Residents say they're tired of turkeys trotting through traffic. City Councilman Steve Mateo says The novelty's worn off. The USDA will round up 100 turkeys and take them to a sanctuary upstate. Turkeys also have invaded the grounds of Staten Island University Hospital. Mateo says there are concerns that people could track bird droppings into the hospital on their shoes. Mostly cloudy today. There is a chance of some showers this afternoon. Highs will be in the mid-70s. Tonight, cloudy with a 50% chance of rain. Lows in the mid-50s. This is WNYC.
The level of incompetence in this office is staggering.
I'm David Remnick. I don't envy the writers of the show Veep, because these days, real-life politics is much stranger than fiction.
When this show started, it was political satire, and now it feels really like a somber documentary.
Julia Louis-Dreyfus, the star of Veep. She joins me next time on the New Yorker Radio Hour. Saturday mornings at 10 on 93.9 FM.
It's Morning Edition on WNYC. I'm Richard Hake. The Metropolitan Opera recently announced its 2016-17 season, which will include 6 new productions, including one composed by a woman. That work, L'Amor dell'Oan, by Finnish composer Kaija Saariaho, will be the first time since 1903 that the Met has staged an opera by a woman. Joining us now to discuss it is Francesca Ambello. She's the artistic director of the Washington National Opera and the general director of Glimmerglass Festival. Welcome to WNYC.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here with you today.
So, as a woman who runs both an opera company and an opera festival, how did you react when you heard this news?
Well, I was very glad that the Met was producing her work. She's a superb composer. She's had an amazing voice in contemporary music for at least 20 years. The work has been seen in a number of other companies, but I'm very glad that the Met was producing it. I think trumpeting, it's a big deal that there's a female composer is a little sad. There have been a lot of other great women composers in the last decades, and but I'm again very appreciative that they're doing her work, and it's always important that any company does contemporary opera. For myself, in my companies, I'm very committed to contemporary work, also to female composers as well as male composers.
Yeah, how do you approach diversity issues? Is it in an issue, is the issue in casting, or is it in how you select the opera?
Well, it's a multi-pronged thing when you put together a season. So for me, I think of everything as honestly as a kind of a dim sum platter. I try to have a very broad scope of work, classical, contemporary, and American. I'm personally very committed to American composers. In terms of diversity, I am extremely committed to it. In terms of racial diversity for casting, I mean, I think of diversity, there's diversity in who you hire to lead shows, meaning conductors, directors, and designers. And I'm pretty much on the 50-50 balance. And then in terms of diversity in casting, I am extremely committed to making every cast look like the world.
And that's for you. Would you say opera in general in this country, the choices are kind of pushed by the audience, or do you think the companies need to take more of a lead to become more diverse?
I think that the companies must instigate the lead. If you want to have an audience that includes true diversity, not only in race, but also in age. If you want to have kids, if you want to have young people, you have to change pricing, you have to change content, and of course marketing.
Here in New York City, we used to have City Opera, then there was Gotham Chamber Opera, 2 companies that were a bit more experimental, but they're gone now. Does that mean that New York opera fans, if you're here in New York to see the opera, will have to settle for what's being shown at the Met, or has real experimentation in opera always been outside the city?
Well, I think that now there are a number of great companies in New York City, and if I started to list them, I would feel bad to leave someone out. But there are many that are doing a really broad range of contemporary work, or what you might consider more experimental. But if you want to see that core La Boheme, Carmen, Aida, what we call the ABCs, you do go to the Met. There is a new New York City Opera Renaissance. They just did a production of Tosca. But of course, I have to say, if you want to see great opera, Cooperstown, the Glimmerglass Festival is a summer festival, and it's a 3-hour drive away from here. And we're the second biggest producer of opera in New York State at this point. So I think that's a little outside of New York City's boundaries, but certainly a festival allows you to see a couple of different things at once.
Francesca Ambello is the artistic director of the Washington National Opera and the general director of Glimmerglass Festival. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Support for NPR comes from member stations and from CarMax, offering more than 40,000 used cars and trucks online and in-store with over 150 locations from coast to coast. Learn more at CarMax.com. CarMax, the bright side of car buying. And visit St. Petersburg Clearwater, offering 35 miles of white sand, Florida Gulf beaches, and St. Pete's Dolly Museum, presenting Disney and Dolly, Architects of the Imagination, now through June 12th at visitstpeteclearwater.com.
Coming up next, WNYC's health segment, and later on Morning Edition, policymakers in Washington would very much like to know what Russia will do next, especially in Syria. But U.S. intelligence agents are finding President Putin an especially unpredictable target. Also, an exhibition called Unfinished at the museum now known as the Met Breuer on East 75th Street. It's raising questions about the whole idea of finishing artworks or not finishing them. And for the last 4 months, secrecy has surrounded who will be named Myanmar's next president. Well, today, the National League for Democracy Party nominated 2 candidates, and we'll find out who they are. Mostly cloudy today, a slight chance of showers this afternoon. Highs will be in the mid-70s, chance of rain 20%. Cloudy tonight with a 50% chance of rain, and lows will be in the mid-50s. This is WNYC. It's time for our Thursday health segment where we explore health, medicine, and the human body. This week's story is about the science of female desire. For women, there's no magic pill to improve sexual experiences. Not yet, anyway. Mary Harris, host of WNYC's Only Human podcast, explains why. Please be aware this story may not be appropriate for all listeners.
When Viagra came out 20 years ago, men couldn't get enough of it.
Guys, it's just the two of you.
Curling up in bed with a favorite book is nice, but I think women would rather curl up with their favorite man.
Viagra helps guys with ED get and keep an erection.
Talk to your doctor about Viagra, America's most prescribed treatment for
The New York Times called it Viagra madness. Last October, another new sex pill hit the market. This time, it was for women.
Well, there is something now called the little pink pill.
It's called Addie.